Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're going to be showcasing a powerful Shadow Dragonair team that helped stop Alcatraz climb over 400 points in 2 days to reach number 1 in the world. The team consists of Shadow Dragonair lead with Medicham and Bastiodon in the back, and the goal is to stay in basically any lead, fight for switch, and set up your backline with alignment to close in the endgame. This team works very well because fairy types are underutilized in the current Great League meta. Having Shadow on Dragonair is very important. Unfortunately, I only have the regular, but make sure you use the Shadow. Hopping to the first match, leading Dragonair into Noctowl. As I mentioned, we're going to be staying in most every lead and trying to fight for switch advantage. Dragonair can output a tremendous amount of damage thanks to Dragon Breath, and with Body Slam and Aqua Tail, it is two pretty spammy charge moves it can use. Able to connect with the first Body Slam, opponent is going to be firing off a Sky Attack here. I do comfortably tank a Sky Attack, so I am going to let that through, and Dragonair is able to win CMP over the Noctowl. Is my opponent willing to commit a shield? They are not, and just like that, we have one switch advantage, and that's very important as they have their own Medicham in the back. So now that I have switch advantage, I can align it against my own Medi. I'm going to commit the shield as a Psychic would do quite a lot of damage. Opponent is going to send in Lantern, and I'm going to send in the Bastiodon. Unfortunately, they have two Bastiodon counters in the back, but Bastiodon has more play against Lantern than it does against Medicham. Lantern is going to go for the Surf. XL Bastiodon is extremely tanky, so I will be able to tank multiple Surfs in this matchup. I fire off the Stone Edge. Stone Edge is going to get the Lantern low. Lantern going to continue the spam of Surfs. They're going for Surf number 2. That's going to get me into the yellow. Bastiodon can actually tank a third Surf here as well, which is pretty incredible. They go for Surf number 3. Bastiodon able to hang on, and they're forced to empty their energy. And now I just have to rely on my Medicham to clean up this game. I'm going to send in my Medicham, and I think I may have to bait to try and win this game. So I'm going to go for the Ice Punch bait here, hoping for the shield, and I get the shield. That's huge. Now I'm just going to go straight for the Psychic in case they try and call a second bait. Psychic is going to be shielded, and now it's going to be a race, but I do have more HP than them, so I think I'm in an okay spot here, as long as I don't get the defense drop, which I do not, and I avoid a catch. Thankfully, they are not able to make the catch. I'm going straight for the Psychic. Psychic is going to get them low. At the last possible second, they do make their Psychic, though. This will put me deep into the red. The question is, can I farm down the Lantern here? Lantern, Spark is not going to do a lot of damage. Medicham gets the farm down, and that is a good game. Tricky lead in the next match, Dragonair into Galarian Stunfisk. This is a matchup where the Shadow Dragonair can win the 2s, but unfortunately, since mine is only a regular, I'm not able to do so. I'm going to stay in this matchup and fire off an Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail is able to land. They have quite a bit of energy here. I decide to let this go. My opponent goes for the Rock Slide bait. I continue to farm. They save switch into Venusaur, and I am more than happy to stay in here. Dragonair can comfortably take switch versus Venusaur, and that means I get to align Medicham onto their Stunfisk in the endgame. So I will be committing the shield here. My opponent goes for the Frenzy Plant. They're going to try and reach another move, but Dragon Breath is just too strong, and I'm able to KO. In comes their final Pokemon, and it's Trevenant, and I'm very happy to have switch advantage here, because now I can align the Trevenant onto my Bastiodon and save the Medicham for the Galarian Stunfisk. So having switch here is absolutely crucial. They're going to be firing off a Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball able to land onto the Bastiodon. In comes the Galarian Stunfisk, and I send back in the Medicham. In this moment, I don't really want to leave this matchup with a lot of health, because, unfortunately, then the Trevenant is going to get a ton of farm. So I actually stop attacking here, let them throw a Rock Slide, because I want to take as much damage as possible. So I take extra Mud Shots, and I farm at the last possible second. In comes the Trevenant. I'm going for the Ice Punch here. Ice Punch is going to get the shield. My opponent is going to be able to farm down, and honestly, I should have just gone for the extra counter there. Throwing the Ice Punch doesn't really help me, because at this point, I need to commit to the farm down. I call a bait, it's a Seed Bomb, and at this point, this game should be over. All I have to do is shield once, farm down, and the game is done. Opponent goes for the Shadow Ball, Bastiodon smacks down, and gets the win. Positive lead in the next match, Dragonair into Trevenant. Opponent is going to be save switching into Azumarill, and I'm going to respond with Bastiodon. I've found that not very many Azus are running Hydro Pump at the moment, so I am going to bring in Bastiodon. But bad news for me, this is the one Azu running Hydro Pump, so this is actually a negative matchup. If they don't have Hydro Pump, Bastiodon does comfortably beat Azumarill, but unfortunately, I guess wrong in this moment. At this point, I'm not willing to shield the Bastiodon, I'm just going to let this go. And interestingly enough, my opponent goes for an Ice Beam bait, and that is very nice for me, as now I can either win switch or force a shield with the Stone Edge. My opponent is going to commit the shield, and I've seen their moveset. They're running Ice Beam and Hydro Pump. They do not have Play Rough, which means I don't have to shield my Medicham here. I'm going to send in the Medicham, absorb all of this energy, and just look to commit to the farm down. This is only another Ice Beam. I can tank this because I want to leave with a ton of energy to threaten the Trevenant when my opponent decides to bring it back in. Opponent is waiting their clock here, but when they send back in the Trevenant, they're going to be met with back-to-back Ice Punches from the Medicham, and Ice Punch number 2 is going to KO or grab the final shield, and then I have 2 shield Dragonair versus the world. Ice Punch number 2 is going to grab the final shield from the Trevenant. In comes Dragonair. This is only a Seed Bomb, so I'm going to let this through. I'm going to save my shields. We'll see what's in back. It's a Registeel, and we have this game won, as the Dragon Breath damage plus the Aqua Tails are going to absolutely shred through the Regi. Aqua Tail number 1 is able to land. I've saved my shields up till this point, and I'm finally going to start to use them. They go for the Zap Cannon, and they do not get the debuff. That is absolutely fantastic. I have the back-to-back Aqua Tails loaded. First one gets the Registeel low. I'm going for Aqua Tail number 2, and they are almost at their next charge move. Aqua Tail barely doesn't KO, so I make the last second catch, catching their move onto the Medicham, and at this point, I can safely farm down the Trevenant. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. Moving into the next match, leading Dragonair into Tapu Fini. On paper, this may look like a bad matchup, but Dragonair puts up one heck of a fight here. As you can see, the double resisted Dragon Breaths just shred through Tapu Fini, and after landing one Body Slam, they are pretty close to the red. I will respect the potential Moonblast here. Opponent does full send it, and I'm in a great spot. Opponent will save switch into Galarian Stunfisk. I'm going to farm up a ton of energy, go for the Aqua Tail, bank the second move, and then send in my Medicham. I want to save that energy because I feel like it can be useful later in the match. They're going to go for the Earthquake. That's perfectly fine by me. It looks like they are going to be able to reach a second Earthquake before I can farm down, so I am going to go for the Ice Punch. This way I can guarantee either a shield or the knockout. My opponent wants to try and flip switch. I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to commit my final shield here, as it is the Earthquake, and I'm able to farm down. My opponent is going to send in Tapu Fini. I'm going to farm and then go for the Ice Punch. Ice Punch will be lethal from this range. Down goes Tapu Fini. In the back, they have Gliscor, and I should have this game won. I'm going to fire off the Ice Punch. This will be grabbing the shield from my opponent. Send in the Dragonair and fire off the Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail is going to do massive damage onto the Shadow Gliscor. Gliscor is going to fire off a Night Slash here. Night Slash will be doing some solid damage onto the Dragonair. They get the farm down. They're going to be able to reach a Shadow Earthquake versus Bastiodon, but XL Bastiodon does not care about your Shadow Earthquake. Bastiodon tanks the Earthquake, and that's a good game. Picking up a decent lead in the next match, Dragonair into Sableye. Dragonair has a ton of play here, and I'm very happy to see the Sableye on the lead, so that way my Medicham will not have to face it later on. They're going to go for the foul play. I will shield up right off the bat and continue to farm before going for the Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail should just about KO from this range. Aqua Tail is going to get the shield. Dragonair continuing to farm. I could have gone for CMP there, as Dragonair will typically win CMP over Sableye, but instead, I decide to save my energy. I'm going to farm up a ton of energy and send in Bastiodon onto their Noctowl save switch. Noctowl is in an incredibly tough spot here, as they really cannot do a lot. They can spam out Shadow Balls, but XL Bastiodon is just too tanky, able to absorb Shadow Ball after Shadow Ball and just commit to the farm down. Noctowl able to reach another Shadow Ball, but Bastiodon still just does not care, able to tank a move, fully farm down, and leave with so much energy loaded for whatever my opponent decides to send in. They're going to send in Galarian Stunfisk. I'm throwing the Flamethrower right away to get some chip damage. I have to watch for a catch here. Opponent goes for the catch onto Sableye. I get the farm down, and at this point, my opponent is not even going to get to see my third Pokemon. Flamethrower gets them low. I have the double moves on Dragonair. Aqua Tail number 1 is going to get the shield. Opponent loses CMP to Dragonair on charge move number 2. We don't even need the Medicham as Dragonair gets the win. We've got an interesting lead in the next match, Dragonair into Dunsparce. Dunsparce is able to reach back-to-back drill runs before I get my back-to-back body slams, so I will need to commit a shield in order to guarantee switch advantage in this matchup. I'm going to fire off the body slam first. Body slam is able to land. Dunsparce is now at the back-to-back drill runs. I'm going to tank 1, shield 1, and then let's see if I can farm down. They're going for drill run number 2. I will commit the shield, and then Dragonair. Let's see what it can do. Opponent is going to save switch into Cresselia. I'm going to farm up a bunch of energy here. Go for the Moonblast catch, but my opponent shows great patience, holding on to their energy, and they're going to be able to fire off Grass Knots onto the Bastiodon. Thankfully, Bastiodon is extremely tanky, so I'm able to absorb this Grass Knot damage like it's nothing. They go for another Grass Knot. I'm going to fire off the Stone Edge, looking to apply some pressure onto the Cress. Decision time for the opponent. They're going to let that move go on the Cresselia. They're going to be firing off another Grass Knot, perfectly fine by me. I should be able to tank whatever they throw and farm down here, but my opponent is going to take advantage of the desynced switch timers, send in their Medicham, and that's a beautiful play for them, and really bad news for me. I go for the Flamethrower. That's not going to do a lot of damage. I'm going to send back in Dragonair. I have double moves loaded, firing off the Body Slam. That's going to land. I'm going for another. I was hoping that they would try and go for CMP there, but great awareness by my opponent, recognizing they can just farm me down. And now, honestly, I'm in a bit of an awkward spot here because I lost so much health on my Bastiodon because I was still switch locked. That aggressive play by my opponent was an incredibly good one. They go for the Psychic. That does a ton of damage. They are going to be able to reach another Psychic, and they even wait a turn there to make sure that I'm not able to make a catch. Psychic is going to be shielded. In comes Cresselia. I'm going for the Ice Punch here. This is going to be tough. My guess is they're probably going to overfarm by 1, and then I'm going to try and catch, but they end up waiting a turn again. Absolutely perfect gameplay from my opponent, and they're going to be able to get the win here. Picking up a positive lead in the next match, Dragonair into Trevenant. Considering I have a Medicham in the back, very happy to catch the Trev on the lead. I'm just going to stay in with Dragonair and force switch advantage, as I always do with this team. I will respect the potential Shadow Ball. Opponent baits with a Seed Bomb, and that is quite unfortunate, as that means the next time they reach their Shadow Ball, it's going to be a CMP tie if I throw my move. So instead, I don't want to get stuck in a CMP tie, so I'm actually just going to go for the extra here. I'm going to shield up and farm down. My opponent does not want to let that happen. They're going to save switch into Galarian Stunfisk. Here, I could have brought in Medicham, but part of me was hoping if I went for the back-to-back Aqua Tails, I would be able to grab a shield, because getting that final shield would be quite nice. I go for Aqua Tail number 2. My opponent lets that through, and that was not a great use of my energy there, to be 100% honest. They're going to fire off the Earthquake. Earthquake is going to land. The good thing is I'll be able to reach an Ice Punch versus that Trevenant, as the Trevenant is very low. My opponent does not want to let that happen. They're going to send in their Noctowl instead. I'm going to fire off the Ice Punch here. Ice Punch will hit for some solid super effective damage, and here we see great counting by my opponent, firing off the Sky Attack just before I make my second Ice Punch. Sky Attack is going to KO. Bad news for the opponent, however. I have Bastiodon to crush the Noctowl. In comes Bastiodon. They send in Trevenant. I bring in Dragonair, and that is a good game. Hopping into the final match, leading Dragonair into another Tapu Fini. We've seen this lead before, and we know how to play it out. We're just going to stay in with Dragonair and just apply a lot of pressure onto the Fini. Tapu Fini is a pretty strong water type, but unfortunately, it's not the best fairy type ever due to the fact that its fast move is resisted against dragons. They fire off a Surf Bait. I do commit the shield. I continue to farm up. Opponent save switches into Galarian Stunfisk. I'm going to bank double Aqua Tail for later and send in my Medicham. Since I farmed up before switching out, they will be able to reach 2 Earthquakes in this matchup, meaning that if I want to keep my Medicham alive, I will have to shield. Honestly, that's kind of fine by me, so I am going to commit the shield when they reach this second Earthquake. I'm going to lead with a decent amount of HP remaining, and a move to threaten a shield from the Feeny. I'm able to get the farm down. Opponent more than likely going to be sending back in the Tapu Fini. No baits here. I'm going for the Psychic. I want the KO. If they call a bait, they are going to commit the shield. I continue to farm up here. I make it to the Ice Punch, but I lose CMP. Very nice counting there by my opponent. Surf is going to KO. I'm going to send in Bastiodon in the back. They have Shadow Gliscor. I'm going to farm up, get some smackdown damage, and then send in the Dragonair. Dragonair, Aqua Tail gets the shield, and I win CMP over the Gliscor. Let's go. Aqua Tail gets them into the red, and at this point, this game should be won. My opponent goes for the Earthquake to get the KO. In comes Bastiodon. Bastiodon will be hit with a Night Slash, but that is not going to matter. Bastiodon takes the Night Slash, leaves with the Stone Edge loaded. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. All in all, this team feels absolutely insane against the current Open Great League meta. As for the lead, I would highly recommend using Shadow Dragonair if you have it, as Shadow Dragonair can actually beat Galarian Stunfisk in the 2s, whereas the regular unfortunately cannot. I believe Stop Alcatraz was able to climb over 400 points in 2 days to hit #1 in the world with the team, and the strategy is pretty straightforward. Fight for switch advantage with your Shadow Dragonair, and then the Medicham Bastiodon core with the right alignment can absolutely crush in the end game. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is absolutely incredible. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.